All right, this is the Green the Vote Christian Challenge Part 3. We have a lot of ground to cover. I'm in my construction gear because we're going to have to do some major construction here today. Here's some things to keep in mind. I speak only for myself. I am sharing the views and opinions that I have, and I know that they're shared by a lot of people. 23 states have already passed medical marijuana in America. That's what this is about. It's about medication and about taking care of your fellow man. It's not about recreational use. I understand there are pros and cons all the way around. And what I'm hoping today is to deal with some of the cons in a positive manner. Let's begin. I don't have enough time to cover it all. There's no way. There's just so many objections. So let's get right down to it. First of all, you should know some things about me. I have been a veteran. I was a military policeman in the Army. My grandfather was artillery soldier during World War II. My father-in-law was a paratrooper in World War II. We have a long military history. My father, my uncles, all served in the military. I love and respect the veterans who have made the ultimate sacrifice for this country. I love America, and there is nothing I want to do to dishonor the lives and the bloods of the veterans. So let's get that out of the way to begin with. This has nothing that's meant to be disrespectful. So if you have somebody in your family or your loved one who has proudly served, I lift them up and honor them today. Now let's go on. Like I said, we don't have much time, so I'll just get right into it. One of the things that I like to do is I like to study early American history. Oh, I just dig it. I get into it. I go all the way back. Let me tell you one of the first guys that we came across for your pre-revolutionary type gentleman you might want to look up. His name is James Otis. The story goes that one day his descendants were walking along in an old graveyard, and they had been looking for him and couldn't find him. And apparently what had happened was that where they had buried him, there was an oak tree nearby, and it had grown so much that it literally, the roots of it, the stalk of it, the trunk of it had enveloped his tomb. Now, James Otis was the guy who fought England in the courts here in America about the writ, the open writ, which basically said that the English officers could write a search warrant to go into your house if they suspected that you had smuggled goods. And they used that for everything. There was no specifics to it, no dates, no times, no list of what contraband. It just basically let them go into anybody's house anytime and seize things. And so they would grab people's homes, they would grab people's ships, they would grab all kinds of things. And at the time, they would pack the people up that were accused and send them overseas to England to stand trial. And by the time they got done making the 4-month journey or whatever it was over there and coming back, if they managed to survive the trial, however long they might have been there for years, there was nothing to come back to. It was all gone, all confiscated, all claimed by British officers or whoever had authority at the time. Okay. When the Americans first came to America, it wasn't this. It was the 13 colonies, okay? We came from the European countries based on the ideals of we wanted to have freedom of religion because we were persecuted. As Puritans, as whatever, Protestants, whatever it might have been, the church was tied in with the state. And so when we came over here, there were many people that put everything, life, limb, money, everything online to come to a vast wilderness. And they had to establish everything from the beginning. And they had no way to know how they were going to govern themselves. They were not members of England anymore, or German, or anybody else. They were going to be colonists, and they were going to start from scratch. I mean, literally, they had to cut the tree down to build the road, which was going to be dirt and mud and stuff. And many of them starved over and over and over. A whole group of colonists would come over, and by the end of the winter, they were basically cannibalizing each other and eating their shoe leather, and very few of them survived. Many children, their mothers died trying to protect them from the cold and huddling over them to protect them. So our country has a very unique thing, a history, in the fact that it wasn't the type of a thing where in Europe you went from village to village and spread slowly and gradually. They came all the way from the other side of the world, basically, over here where there was nothing. There were Native Americans here, and they were, some were peaceful and some were warlike, okay? Now, this was their guide, okay? The Holy Scriptures, the Holy Bible. This told them how they were to build things. And in here is, if you're not familiar, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Numbers, all the things that we see in here, Exodus, the laws that were written there, the Old Testament, the New Testament, recently translated, Tyndale and others, Wycliffe, into English and German. And this was the problem, was that they were beginning to question things, and they were forbidden for questioning. So they had to leave for fear of being put to death, just simply because they wanted the freedom to question, to ask questions. At the time, only the priest was qualified to tell them anything, and if they dared to ask a question or question the authority of the priest, burned at the stake and tortured in 1,000 different ways. And so we need to understand that. Literally, during the Spanish Inquisition, tens of millions of people were killed over the course of hundreds of years because they dared to question the church. So America has its foundation in that. Our founding fathers had that. Now, a lot of you don't know because you've never really been told, or you weren't educated in early American history. So I have a habit of buying books that are old. This is 1820s old. This is a history textbook that you would have studied in school, and the whole how much American history can there be by 1820? This is just the Revolutionary War and the French Indian Wars, and this is just the beginning, and the War of 1812. That's it. That's all that's in here. Okay, there's not really anything, but nowadays it's 5 pages, covers everything from George Washington to modern times. There's just nothing there because you don't have time to teach you all of that. Here's another history book. This is Barnes' Historical Series. This is 1871, I believe it is. This stuff that you learn in the history of schools today, that's not in these books. It's been rewritten, reordered, reprioritized, chop. All kinds of things cut out. One of the things that the schools love to do, because of separation of church and state, which did not exist in the law, in the legal system, until the 1940s, 1947, I believe it was. And prior to that, just for a little bit of trivia, prior to that, we won every war we were ever involved in. After that, we've lost every war we were ever involved in. Hint, hint, people, God has a problem. And his problem is we have a problem with him. So you see, we declared war on God and said, God, we don't want you out of our thing. And so we started stripping God from our history books. And we started stripping God from our classrooms. And we started stripping God from our political arena. And we started stripping God from everything. So nowadays, when people say, oh, well, you don't believe in evolution, you must question science. But what the real question is, you mean you're stupid enough to believe in God? You're stupid enough to believe in creation? Well, here's the thing, church. When the opposition comes up and they begin to say, we can't do this movement, this medical marijuana thing, because it's against the federal law, we need to understand that the federal law has completely changed and prioritized differently than what our founders wanted. And so while our founders were primarily educated in seminaries and ministerial divinity degrees, and most of them had preached in churches, that's not who you have today in Congress or in the Senate or in the White House. It's a whole different country. Okay, we still live in America, God bless us, and God bless our nation, but it's not the America that it used to be. The America that my grandfather fought for was prior to that 1947 decision, where people actually could still feel free to worship God and not worry about the country being at war with God. So what has that got to do with you? You see, you have to decide on whether or not, and this pocket New Testament that made it into World War II, you have to decide on whether or not your Christian faith is the country you serve and the kingdom you serve, or whether or not you serve America as your number one priority. Is it God, country, God, family, country, God, country, family, state? You're going to have to prioritize where you want to be at. What's your number one thing? Our number one thing as Christians are supposed to be the Bible. Okay, I bring that up because if it's the Bible, you cannot serve God and the world. Okay, it contradicts each other. We know the saying, you can't serve God and mammon. That's right. And if you're worried that you might say something political or be drugged into the political arena because you're going to have to pay tax dollars, your worry and your fears are based on the wrong priorities. Jesus, as you may remember, asked Peter, when Peter was challenged, does your master pay the temple taxes? He said, is it right for the children of the kingdom to pay the taxes? And Peter said no. And he said, well, that we might not offend them. He reached in, pulled a fish out of the water, took a couple coins out of him. Go pay the temple tax. Okay? You may have to pay the tax in order to speak up for God. Pay the tax. Speak up for God. America needs the light that is found in the Word of God. So when you have these objections, prioritize, people. Okay. So I know I got to wrap this up real quick because I want to keep this short. I'm going to bring in other videos. Okay. This is just part 3. This deals with the church and about your objections and the challenge to the church to get out and do the right thing in serving your fellow man. We are not talking about illegal things here. We're talking about legalizing what is already illegal, what is already legal in half the states in the country. Does that ring a bell to you? Does that remind you anything? Well, here in the South, yeah, boy, are you feeling a little heat under your collar? You should be, because the South is the Bible Belt. And down here, we deal with people who don't know how to respect authority. The Supreme Court said it was all right to have slavery. The Supreme Court said it was fine to have bounty hunters go up north to the free states, round up the runaway slaves, and take them back down to the South. Are you still putting chains on people? Are you still tied by your own chains and your own prejudice and your own bigotry and your own lack of understanding? You need to break the chains. You need to understand that love exceeds federal borders, state borders, and tradition. This came into effect because when America was founded, slavery was the law of the land. Matter of fact, George Washington had slaves, but he had slaves because he inherited them. He never bought or sold a slave. He let them run his plantation, his farm, whatever you want to call it, his estate. Okay? And when he died, he set them free. He tried to make sure all the families stayed together. That's why he didn't buy or sell slaves. He didn't want to separate any families. He didn't want to put anybody in slavery. He did not condone it. He was against it. When that happened in Virginia, they said, No. No more. Nobody can release their slaves upon point of death. So Thomas Jefferson could not do it. When his estate started going into bankruptcy and he needed to make decisions, he couldn't just give his slaves away and go, oh, yeah, I can't afford to feed my slaves. I can't afford to take care of them. Because it was against the law. Let me tell you something. I'm going to wrap this up here. I know I'm already run over. I've already over my limit for today. James Otis. Let me see if some of these names ring a bell to you. Aristotle. Archimedes. Da Vinci. Galileo. Newton. Pasteur. Any of those? Tesla. How about Madame Curie? How about Einstein? Just some of the names I just, was thinking about earlier. Almost every one of those names people ended up in a fight with the church because there was something that they thought of that they needed to do. And when they ended up with a fight with the church, they ended up with a fight with the government because the government and the church were tied hand in hand in so many different things. Serve your fellow man. Okay? Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that. Okay? Green the Vote. There's their website. Okay? There's their Facebook page. Go there, log on. There's their address. They have meetings every Sunday. Green the Vote. Not because of laws. If we legalize it in Oklahoma, does that override what happens in the United States? No. At the end of the Civil War, many people believe today that did away with state rights in the 10th Amendment. That the states no longer have the authority to tell the federal government to go take a hike. Just so you know that, because somewhere down the line, we may still, even if we change the Constitution in Oklahoma, deal with this fight if a ultra-conservative or legalistic president comes into place. And it doesn't have to be a Democrat or a Republican. It could be either one. Because both of them are power-hungry parties, and both of them are driven for one purpose: power and money. Trillions and trillions of dollars at stake. You've been sold out. I've been sold out. But we have the power to overcome. Number one thing to overcome: God. God. God plus one is a majority in any group. Number two thing to overcome is the fact that our Constitution and our founding fathers said, let's put a limit to what government can do. Let's stop the madness, and let's give the people the power to throw the bums out. Or to change the laws by coming up with a majority of states to ratify anything. So if you get enough states and state conventions together and they ratify to amend the Constitution, there is nothing the federal government can do about it, nothing the Supreme Court can do about it. And as a Christian, you should understand that, because if 80% of Christians actually served the kingdom of God, they'd be on the phone, in the streets, and ringing doorbells and telling them, I want these things that are no longer representative of Jesus Christ and my faith changed in America, and you need to do it. And there'd be nothing the Supreme Court can do about it, because we would change the amendments. Okay. I know I've said a lot. I went twice as long as I intended to. As a church, I want you to challenge your pastors. Push them to the limit. 5 out of 7 churches that are mentioned in Revelations were on the verge of losing their standing in the kingdom of God. Repeatedly, false prophets come along. Repeatedly, the kings failed the people in Israel. We have hundreds and hundreds of examples of leaders failing the flock and sheep of God. You find out where they stand. Don't let them tell you it's against the law. I can't do it. That's not an excuse. Don't let them tell you I can't do it because we can't do anything political. That's not an excuse. You can do anything with God on your side. Money should not be your influence. You cannot serve God and money. I have a lot to talk about, other issues, other objections. And so you hang in there. We're getting ready to get to part 4 in a few days. So I hope to see you then. And again, God bless you. Always look up. Jesus Christ will be coming on the clouds one day soon. And we're getting ready for the ride of a lifetime. God bless you.